Hey everyone, Ethan Ater here with Horizon Hobby, and AS3X Plus is being enjoyed by so many pilots, especially with the recently announced AS3X Plus receivers that come with the flight stabilization system right out of the box. Now with that being said, the AS3X Plus firmware is very easy to download and install on previous select AS3X receivers, and again, it can be enjoyed by many in aircrafts of all brands, all shapes, all sizes. Again, if you have a plug-and-play aircraft, almost ready to fly aircraft, or even a kit for that matter that you want AS3X Plus in, chances are you can easily do so. And what a lot of pilots don't understand is just how easy AS3X Plus is to initially set up. So in this video, I'm going to be showing you just how easy it is by taking this E-flite Turbo Timber Evolution 1.5 meter, and essentially the receiver that is in it is an open stock AS3X Plus receiver. It's not configured for the Turbo Timber Evolution. It's not a bind and fly receiver that came with the aircraft that's already set up for you. This is an open stock receiver, and as far as the receiver knows, this is just a random airplane. So with that being said, I have the NX8 transmitter here, and again, it is updated with the NX Plus firmware, which you need in order to access forward programming to initially set up AS3X Plus. So I'm going to be walking you through just how easy it is to initially set up AS3X Plus on this Turbo Timber Evolution 1.5 meter, representing any plug-and-play aircraft or almost ready to fly aircraft that you want AS3X Plus in. All right, everyone, with the aircraft powered on and the AS3X Plus receiver bounced up to the transmitter, the only two things that I've done in terms of programming on the transmitter side are the throttle cut, which I did for safety purposes, and also the aircraft type, which I set to one aileron, one flap, and that pertains to the Turbo Timber Evolution 1.5 meter. Your aircraft type is going to vary depending on what model you are putting AS3X Plus in or what you are putting your receiver into. Again, you just want to refer to your aircraft's manual and make sure that you have the correct aircraft type. And on top of that, just make sure that you have all of your servo connections plugged into the correct ports on your AS3X Plus receiver. Now, once you have verified that, before you go into forward programming, the next thing that you want to do is make sure that your servo direction is correct, also the amount of travel that you want, as well as your sub trim. And then on top of that, basically just how much degrees of throw you want on the surfaces. You want to make sure that all of this is configured before you go into forward programming and begin your AS3X Plus setup. Because if you do your AS3X Plus setup first, it's going to remember the servo settings in which you initially set it up at. So if you set up the AS3X Plus and in turn go and change the servo settings, you will have to either go back into forward programming and let the receiver know to relearn the servo settings, or else your servo settings are going to be out of whack because, again, you change them after you set up AS3X Plus. So the first thing that I personally like to set up is the servo direction. So cycling all of my servos, I want to make sure that everything is going in the correct direction. So I'm just going to start off by aileron. So moving right aileron, I can see that the left aileron goes up and the right aileron goes down. This is essentially the direction opposite to what I want. So the servos are reversed. So this is whenever I'm going to go into the servo reversing menu. After going to the servo reversing menu and selecting aileron and reversing that channel, you can see that my ailerons now go the correct way. And then next we can do this with the other servos. So looking at elevator, that appears to be reversed as well. So again, we can go back into the reversing menu, reverse the elevator, and as you can see, it will now move the correct way. And checking our rudder direction right here, it appears to be going the correct way. So as you can see, the rudder moves right whenever I give right input on the rudder stick, and it goes left whenever I move the stick left. So all of our surfaces are set. One thing that I'm also going to set as well is the flap, and I have that assigned to switch D, which is personally what I like, and I can see that my flap direction is correct as to what I want in terms of the switch. Again, the flaps go the correct way, all of the other surfaces go the correct way, so I'm all good to go in terms of the servo reversing. The next thing that I recommend doing is going back to your servo setup and going to your sub trim. This is where you want to go ahead and make any adjustments to any servos in which you need to adjust the servo arms and just make sure they are mechanically straight whenever they are at their neutral position. Now that I've centered up all of my servos through subtrim and have mechanically adjusted the linkage control rods for my surfaces so that they are at an optimized neutral position on the aircraft, I can go ahead and go back to the servo setup, and this is where I am going to adjust the travel in order to get the degrees of throw that I want for all of the surfaces. And after successfully getting our aircraft type configured, as well as the servo direction, the subtrim, and then also getting our desired degrees of travel through the travel menu on the Spektrum transmitter, we can now go into forward programming and begin the initial setup for AS3X Plus. With the aircraft powered on and the receiver connected to your transmitter, you should be able to see the forward programming menu in the function list. If you don't see it, chances are that the aircraft is not powered up. So again, once you see the forward programming menu, you can go ahead and select that, go down to gyro settings, and you can begin your first time setup. Again, it's just going to make sure that the model has been configured, which we have done. So we've done the wing type, we've done the reversing, we've done the travel, we've sub-trimmed it, etc. So just verify that. We'll select next. It's just going to remind you that any wing or tail type, channel assignment, subtrim, or servo reversing changes require running through initial setup again. So we're going to select next, set the model level, and press continue. Now, if we press continue, it's going to tell us to orient the model with its nose facing down. So essentially standing the model up on its nose. This is so then the receiver can automatically set the correct orientation, or we can actually go ahead and set the orientation manually. So with this receiver in this particular aircraft, we want orientation 1. Now again, you can change the orientation if you need to, depending on your application on your aircraft. So I'm going to select orientation 1 because this applies to the aircraft that I'm setting up. I'm going to select continue, and this is where I'm going to select the gain channel. Now, I typically recommend running this on the R knob, so then as you are flying, you can adjust the R knob and in turn adjust the gain. So I want to make sure that I have a free channel on the receiver for my gain channel. So for the sake of this video, I'm just going to go to channel 8 since I am not using it, and make sure that it is assigned to the R knob. Now, whenever I first loaded up this model on my transmitter, it automatically defaulted the R knob onto aux3. And if you need to change the channel that you want, you can go ahead and see that you can configure whatever channel you want. But for the sake of the gain channel, I want the R knob. So I'm going to make sure that the input is R knob. I'm going to select next, and then we can go ahead and apply. And as you can see, the receiver is rebooting. And now that the receiver has initialized, you saw those surfaces move. The aircraft is now configured for AS3X Plus. Now that's essentially it for the initial setup. Now you can go into the gyro settings and you can do a first time safe setup if you opt to have safe on your aircraft, or you can go to the AS3X settings, and this is where you can kind of fine tune your AS3X gains. This is essentially the max gain values that you can turn the R knob to. So whenever the R knob is turned to the max, your gain values will be as you see here. And I'm going to show you how to check what your gain values are here in a second, but first I'm going to go back, and really all of these stock settings, I just recommend going ahead and flying your aircraft with these stock settings here and just adjusting as you see necessary. Now, of course, it depends on the aircraft. For a regular plug-and-play aircraft like this, the stock settings are great. If it's a more 3D aircraft, then you can turn down the gain sensitivity, since 3D aircraft or aerobatic aircraft usually have larger surfaces. But for a regular quote-unquote general aviation aircraft that you see here in the video, I'm just going to leave the gain sensitivity at 1x, which is stock, and keep everything else stock. Now, as I was saying, the R knob is going to be what determines your gain values that you set. So at the very max, your gain values are going to be what are set in the gain settings on AS3X. Now, if you go all the way over, you can actually see your max AS3X gains right here. So the R knob is actually turned to the max here. And if you turn it all the way down, you will see that you have no gains, so essentially no gyro. So whenever you take off, I definitely recommend just taking off with no AS3X gains, and then slowly start feeding in the gain whenever you take off. And I recommend this because if you take off with full gain and something isn't set up properly, you definitely don't want the gyro fighting you. So you just want to initially feed in the gain with the R knob like you see here, and you can see that these gain values start rolling in. And of course, whenever you max out the knob, you will see that your AS3X gains are at the AS3X max values that you set in forward programming. And with that, the AS3X Plus initial setup for this aircraft is now complete, and it's essentially ready for you to take it outside and begin its first tuning flight. Thank you all so much for watching. Hopefully you see just how easy AS3X Plus sets up, and soon you will see just how easy it tunes in the air. So again, thank you all so much for watching. We'll see you all in the next one.